Mafia. On today's Air Raid Hour pregame, we will be breaking down what we expect to see from the Bills tonight, plus previewing key matchups and handing out our pregame superlatives. But first,
welcome to the Air Raid Hour, a Cover One Network podcast. Here are your hosts, Judge Mathis and Tilt Money.
ladies and gentlemen, to the Air Raid Hour pregame show presented to you by Picasso's Pizza and the Cover One Sports Network. Alex Keane coming in saying 11 a.m. here in Melbourne, Australia. Go Bills, get the win. We have Bills fans in legitimately every single time zone. I had to rush home from work and daycare, and I got here about 2 minutes before this show started because it's 5 p.m. over here for me. So everybody, no matter what time you are getting ready for this Buffalo Bills matchup, crack open a beverage, whether it be alcoholic or non-alcoholic. If it's 11 a.m. in Australia, you might be at work. It might not be alcoholic beverage time, but crack open a beverage, get ready for this pregame show, and then let's get ready for the Buffalo Bills at the Denver Broncos. BFLO Mafia News says, "Poor Judge, got to buy some rope if we lose." You know what? No, I was just telling you before we got on, like, I don't know, man. Maybe I'm too invested. Maybe we're too invested. Maybe we're all too invested. Maybe we would all be better off caring a little bit less.
Well, here's the thing, right? You grow up with this team. You live and die by every pass, by every game. There's only 16, now 17 of these a year that you get, right? And only 8 of them, eight or 9 at home. And like each game, I feel like we put so much pressure on ourselves as fans. Even we obviously put so much pressure on the team. And in a way, the drought era was easier because there was no expectation. But I think what's really just got everyone kind of like at a point where, there's tension right now, whether it's within the fans, the reporters, the team. It's because the expectation, right? It's the expectation that's come with this team since Josh Allen has really burst onto the scene that has created this tension. And that's why I think we're feeling the way we're feeling right now.
Joe DeRosa coming in and saying, "Did I just join the existential crisis portion?" I was like, "Yeah, we just hit you right off the bat with the existential crisis
right
stuff."
Off the bat.
Leanne comes in and says, "Must win tonight." I mean, I was looking at. I don't want to take the playoff odds in terms of like the percentages and stuff too seriously at this point. But at this point, I think the Buffalo Bills can afford to lose one more AFC game, and then they can maybe drop 2 NFC games for a total of 3 games. You're really cutting it close. So if you lose tonight against a completely beatable Denver Broncos team who you're better than them, no offense, I don't care how beat up we are. I mean, it's going to be a really, really tough road for the Buffalo Bills to even sniff the playoffs. They're going to have to legitimately go out there and win out their AFC and beat a lot of really tough NFC teams in order to make the playoffs. So tonight's a big game for the Buffalo Bills.
It's a big game, and yesterday across the landscape of the AFC didn't really help matters. We saw the Browns win, we saw the Steelers win. We saw teams like that win, get to 6-3. A couple of those teams get to 6-3. So, and then obviously the Colts are still hanging around there with that win against the Patriots. The Jags losing didn't really do much for the Bills, obviously, because they're a division leader. So, it's muddled. It is really muddled in the middle of that AFC. And I mean, look, the Browns down 14 and the Ravens yesterday come back in an improbable fashion, end up winning the game. They were looking like they were going to get run out of the building early, and they come back and win. It's a wild time right now in the AFC. Really the only thing that probably helped the Bills yesterday was the Chargers loss to the Lions. So, wild times in the AFC.
I think the only thing that makes me more upset right now than the Bills being bad is the Pittsburgh Steelers being good. Like, just because they're not, it bugs me. Their offense is, I mean,
It just goes to show you, and this has been kind of the chatter
Mhm.
for the past 10 days since the Bills, last played, or 7 days since the Bills last played, and that loss to the Bengals in 8 days, I guess, was this whole conversation around, like, analytics and, like, what you're seeing on the field, and right, my whole point all along, and I guess one thing that I've tried to kind of make the point of is, like, there's all these analytics, there's all these formulas that take into all these factors and all these things, and it's like, these analytics are really a calculation of what you've done already, right? It's not necessarily
Mhm.
predictive, although it can be. But the problem I think we have is that all these analytics take in all these, like, dozens and dozens of data points, and they tell you that you're this and you're that. But, like, the outcome of NFL games is binary, outside of ties, right? You win or
Mhm.
you lose. And as we know from being sort of part of, I guess, that analytics community, you and I somewhat, like, kind of dive into that, right? It's it's really hard, and this is why we got away from, like, just looking at box scores, right? Because
Mhm.
you look at a box score in the NFL and you see one team wins and another team doesn't, and sometimes you're just, like, dumbfounded, right, as to how
Yeah.
these things can happen, and it's kind of the same thing with this whole analytics debate. It's like all these data points, the outcomes of these games are binary, win
Mhm.
or lose, and the margins are razor thin in the NFL, and so this is what happens sometimes.
All right, let's take a look at the weather for tonight's game. 40s, little to no precipitation, and about 15 or so mile per hour winds. So a little gusty in Orchard Park this evening. That's certainly better weather than was projected earlier in the week. So
Mm.
the nasty stuff, the nasty weather has mostly blown by. The 15 mile per hour winds will be mostly what the players have to battle this evening. So that might be interesting when we get to sort of the kicking and the punting game, but that really doesn't affect quarterbacks like Josh Allen and their ability to throw the football, especially with no precipitation. Looking at the inactives and the injury report for the Broncos, there's something that there's this word healthy. I don't know if you've heard of it. The Broncos are it. They are healthy. Obviously, they have their own players on IR. Kareem Jackson is suspended, etc. Like they've dealt with stuff this year, but for the most part, their inactive list is a bunch of bottom of the roster players. They are playing with a full deck of cards this evening, a full hand of cards this evening. Meanwhile, the Buffalo Bills, Josh Norman elevated from the practice squad. Terrell Bernard cleared concussion protocol. Inactive for the Bills tonight, starting free safety Micah Hyde, starting cornerback Christian Benford, Balin Spector, Jermaine Ifedi, Alec Anderson, and Puna Ford. So it'll be Rasul Douglas and Dane Jackson on the boundaries. It'll be Taylor Rapp and Jordan Poyer at safety. It'll be Terrell Bernard and probably Tyrell Dotson at linebacker. And then you'll probably see a steady dose of Linval Joseph now at one tech defensive tackle for this defense. A new look defense for the Buffalo Bills again for the 15th time heading into this week 9 matchup or week 10 matchup, excuse me, against the Denver Broncos.
Yeah, and you start to wonder about Micah Hyde, DNP all week. What's his future going to be? Like, is this going to be something where maybe the Bills
Mhm.
just try to take Micah Hyde into the bye week at this point and see what can happen? We'll see. Don't want to necessarily speculate there. You'll probably see some sprinkling of Dorian Williams in there tonight as well, with Tyrell Dotson, Taylor Rapp, and Poyer at the safety spot. Like, again, Taylor Rapp hasn't really maybe lived up to some of the expectations so far that the offseason signing came with, lauded pretty positively at the time. He's got a chance to step up tonight and prove that he can fill in. Um, this is where your depth gets tested. And when we didn't think that the Bills were going to sign an extra safety, they went ahead and did. And now
Mhm.
we're kind of glad they did. So let's hope Taylor
Yeah.
Rapp can fill in. And this Rasul Douglas trade, right? I mean, what a blessing this seems to be now, and the timing with Benford's
Mhm.
injury, and obviously the trade was made with the thought of Trey White's injury. But man, I'm glad he's hasn't had another week in the facility, and I'm really happy that he's there right now for the Bills.
It'll be really interesting to see how the Buffalo Bills decide to match up in the secondary. Obviously, the Denver Broncos have some weapons that they can throw out there. Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton, Marvin Mims. So they got some receivers and some guys. So if the Bills make the decision to go into any of those dime looks that they've been going to over the course of the past couple of weeks, We saw in game last week when Micah Hyde went out, it was Taylor Rapp to free safety, Cam Lewis to the thick dime spot. And Cam Lewis is not a thick boy. So it'll be interesting to see if maybe the Buffalo Bills, with a week to prepare, a week and a day to prepare, do we see Cam Lewis at free safety or DeMar Hamlin at free safety and Taylor Rapp back in at strong safety and Jordan Poyer back into the box? Do we see an implementation of Saran Neal? Like, these are all things that sort of go through my head as to maybe what we'll see from the Buffalo Bills this week. Now that they have a week to prepare for some of these injuries.
Well, and you said this, and I know I did going into the season. The Bills really, from a safety perspective, had 3 strong safeties and a free safety, right? If you want to think of it, like they had Micah Hyde, who was really the only center fielder, and DeMar Hamlin and Taylor Rapp are more down in the box type safeties. You know, Jordan Poyer is probably the most versatile of all of those guys. So it'll be interesting to see how the Bills figure this out. Maybe Cam Lewis does play a bit. Maybe they do a little bit of 3 safety there, but the Bills don't really have a true replacement for Micah Hyde on the roster. Like they have safeties, but they really don't have a replacement for him.
And this one is crazy too. And this one I don't agree with, but I'm going to throw it out there. Tyrell Dodson looked a lot more comfortable at Mike linebacker in the second half. Could we see a scenario in which Tyrell Dodson plays the Mike and Terrell Bernard is put out into that Matt Milano weak side linebacker spot? I doubt it, just because Bernard has played so well at the Mike, and that's going to be his position when Matt Milano comes back, and that's his position for the future of this football team. But could the Buffalo Bills look to maybe put Bernard in more of a playmaking role and Tyrell Dodson in more of that Mike role? Could we see at some point them flip? I don't maybe necessarily agree with it, because you're moving guys around and shuffling guys around and putting guys out of their normal stalwart positions. But I don't know. Maybe the Buffalo Bills go to that as something they make an attempt to do.
Maybe rotationally, right? You might see it situationally in certain spots, but I just feel like with the way the Bills are injured right now, like put guys, I think first and foremost, you got to put guys where they feel the most comfortable right now because of everything you've got going on. And then, you know, kind of adjust as you see fit from there. But I wouldn't expect that to be the case. If anything, maybe you'd see a little bit more Dorian Williams come in, play weak side, depending on what's going on. Because this Broncos running game, we're going to get to it, is not to be, in my opinion, not to be taken lightly. So
before we get to this Broncos running game, we're going to get into the Buffalo Bills offense versus the Denver Broncos defense. But before that, a quick word from the boys over at the Cover One Buffalo podcast on the best ways you can support us here at Cover One.
Many people ask us the best way to support us here at Cover One, and that is to sign up to become a Cover One Pass member. That contribution helps give us the access to all the data and information we use to create the content that you love.
And I think most importantly, brings you into our community of insiders. It's a great community based on Slack. I know a lot of people don't want to be on social media anymore or be in on those conversations. We bring all of it to you right in our great community of educated fans. And most importantly, you get access to our content creators.
Even better than that, everybody loves merch. You get awesome t-shirts, a cool decal, and a letter from the Cover One team signed directly to you.
All for $60. That gets you the entire season, next year's free agency and draft. $60. Click the link in the description. Cover One Insider. Become one today.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you, Aaron. All right, let's talk Buffalo Bills offense versus the Denver Broncos defense. And I want to get into more of a maybe like a philosophical question to start this show, and you can maybe throw some data points in if you like to support your answer here. But I look at the Buffalo Bills right now, and I look at all the skill position players, and I think to myself, when this game is over, obviously things are going to dictate who gets targets, etc., who's open, who's schemed a certain way, blah, 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 blah. But like in a perfect world, when you're Ken Dorsey, you're drawing up the game plan. Stefon Diggs is your number one. He's the guy that you hope by the end of the game has the most targets of any player on the offense, because he is the biggest part of this offense. But outside of Stefon Diggs, and you're Ken Dorsey and you're planning this game plan, who you want to get the ball into the hands of, who's number 2 this week? Is it Dalton Kincaid, the promising young tight end? Is it Gabriel Davis, your boundary wide receiver number 2? Is it Khalil Shakir, the up-and-coming slot receiver who shows a little bit more versatility than being just a pure slot receiver? Or is it James Cook, a guy who can get touches not only out of the backfield as a pass catcher, but in his traditional role as a running back as well. Who do you want to be number 2 in terms of who gets the most touches in this football game?
Touch it. Well, man.
I shouldn't even say touches, being like the second focal point of this offense today.
I think it's splitting hairs between Kincaid and Cook for me. And so I think statistically you look at Denver, DVOA, they're dead last against defending wide receiver number 2s, which obviously would mean that it should set Gabriel Davis up for a big day, and that's fine. But they're also 26th against the tight end. They've given up the most yards to tight ends of any team, and that's with a bye week in tow for the Denver Broncos. Dalton Kincaid has really been stepping up not just over the middle of the field, but also on the boundary in certain situations for the Bills. And I feel like he's ascending, right? He is ascending. He has momentum behind him. And I think if you're talking about in the passing game, it's got to be Dalton Kincaid, I think, as the number 2 option tonight. Now, with that said, it's a splitting hairs for me between him and James Cook. And the reason I say that is because the Denver Broncos are dead last in the NFL in rushing defense on a raw statistics basics yards per game. They're dead last. They're giving up over 16 more yards per game on the ground than the second worst team in the league. Like, if there was ever a game where you were going to get James Cook rolling on the ground and you wanted to really exert your will on the opponent, this would be the night for James Cook and Latavius Murray, etc. So to me, like you've said from before the season, funnel your offense tonight through Diggs, Kincaid, and Cook. To me, I don't care if it's Kincaid or Cook as kind of the quote number 2. I think it should be really that trifecta of guys tonight. Kincaid in the passing game, Cook in the running game, Denver dead last in DVOA defense, and man, dead last in rushing yards per game allowed and most yards allowed to tight end. So it's all there for the Bills to take. It comes down to, I think, play calling and execution right now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. This offense needs to be funneled through Stefon Diggs, it needs to be funneled through Dalton Kincaid, it needs to be funneled through James Cook, and then you have Gabriel Davis and Khalil Shakir. There's a lot of people this week that were calling for like more Deontay Hardy, who only had 3 offensive snaps last week, more Trent Sherfield. I'm just not buying that right now. I think right now, obviously, Diggs is your alpha. I think Kincaid is really on the come up, like could by the end of the season be seen as an elite number 2 weapon in the National Football League if he keeps projecting it the way he's projecting week after week after week. And then you obviously, I just James Cook needs to be more involved. Like, I just didn't feel James Cook's presence last week. Obviously, we also didn't feel Gabriel Davis's presence last week, but I feel like I feel more comfortable and more confident in this offense when James Cook's presence is felt.
Yeah, I mean, I put the stat out, I think it was yesterday or maybe the day before, weeks 1 through 4, James Cook, 14 receptions, the first 4 games, first 5 games, last 4 games, only 8 receptions combined over the last 4 games. They really haven't gotten him going too much in the passing game lately. A couple okay plays in that last game against the Bengals, but it came late. I just don't see why you're not involving him. Like last night, I'm sure Jets fans screaming at the TV, why are you not getting Breece Hall involved in the passing game? The second they got Hall involved in the passing game, they rip off a 35-yard play and the Jets get into position. Like, it's these things, like you scream at Nathaniel Hackett to get Breece Hall involved. Like, we need to get James Cook involved in the passing game too. And I know there's only so many targets to go around, but make him a priority, right?
Yeah.
Make Diggs a priority, obviously, but Kincaid and Cook need to be priorities. And then if Gabe Davis can kind of fall into that sort of second tier of weapons, right? Him, Shakir, whatever, like, then so be it. And that's just how it's going to have to be. But I really would like to see Cook getting more involved in the passing game.
Over under 2 targets for Gabriel Davis tonight.
2 targets? Oh, you'll have over 2 targets.
I think the Buffalo Bills, like, I wouldn't be surprised if you see like an overcorrection this week where maybe the Buffalo Bills try to force feed Gabriel Davis the football a little bit like they did in that Tampa Bay Buccaneers game. I'm surprised they didn't go back to some of that stuff that worked in the Buccaneers game when they had a week and a half to prepare for the Cincinnati Bengals. So that was always odd. All right. Up next, I want to talk about Ken Dorsey and Ken Dorsey's game plan. So
Yeah.
we're going to talk about Josh Allen next, and we can talk about the things that Josh Allen can do better. But, we've been talking about Ken Dorsey all week in the Cover One group chat, on social media, in our Twitter feeds, etc. I think that, and you did a great job this week working with Eric to create a graphic. I think if there's one thing Ken Dorsey can do better this week, I think the Buffalo Bills need to be more aggressive on first down.
Be more aggressive on first down, because ultimately, when this offense is working well, do you really, like, when it's working well, and I know maybe lately it hasn't, but do you really worry too much whether you're in 2nd and 8 or 2nd and 10? Like, no, it doesn't really make a difference. So if it doesn't make a difference whether you're 2nd and 8 or 2nd and 10, why run the ball? Don't run the ball as much on first down, 2-3 yard. Like, take some shots, right? Take some shots, and then try to avoid maybe some of those mathematically disadvantageous play calling of 2nd and long runs, like the Jets did that a ton last night as well, and clearly didn't work. So again, I'm expecting that will be the case tonight. They will go a little bit more aggressive on first down, but it is a balancing act, right? Because you do have to kind of look at the opponent and realize that this team has really struggled defending the run. So, and I'm not saying you go like all the opposite the other way and go all pass and no run, but like, I'd like to see sprinkled in a little bit more, some more aggressive down the field shots on early downs.
Yeah, and Charles G comes in and says they have to find ways to bring back explosive plays. And that was the other conversation we were having about Ken Dorsey. It's not like Ken Dorsey calls bad plays, right? Like, there were some situations where he's been calling shots and Josh Allen's just missing them. And he's calling good plays and Josh Allen is just missing guys underneath, or et cetera. And like, Josh Allen's not making the hot route. But we were also having the discussion with Ken Dorsey where, like, the creativity is not there where it is with some other coaches. Like, yes, Josh is missing some easy stuff. Yes, Josh is missing some of the downfield stuff that creates some of these game-changing plays. But there are other offensive coordinators who might have some tricks up their sleeves in order to manufacture chunk plays that Ken Dorsey just doesn't have, because Ken Dorsey's like, here's the play, go run it, right? Whereas he doesn't really have these sort of ways to scheme certain players open, and he's not game planning each week to get the ball in certain guys' hands. It's mostly just, here are the plays, go run them. Whoever's open, get them the ball. So Ken Dorsey probably has to work on that, whether he is capable of it or not. We'll find out in the coming weeks. But if Josh Allen isn't hitting these shots down the field traditionally, the Buffalo Bills need to find a way to manufacture chunk plays.
Yeah, and I think it's a couple things, right? One, the creativity maybe isn't there. And so that's obviously what you just mentioned. And part of that is being able to tailor plays to your players, right? And sort of that element of the coaching and kind of putting in plays that are really designed for certain guys, right? And their strengths. That's something I don't think we've never necessarily seen. It's been like personnel comes in, doesn't matter who it is, the play is run, and that's what it is. There's no nuance to the personnel. There's no nuance taken into account of the personnel to the play design or play calling. That's number one. And number two, part of his job as the offensive coordinator is to coach Josh up on some of these situations where Josh is missing throws and he's missing guys. It's to say, hey, let's come back to this play later where this guy was open and let's try to hit this guy on the first or second read. And like, yes, Josh ultimately has to be the one to pull the trigger, but part of your job as the offensive coordinator and the coach is to instill that in your player, right? And have that execution sort of reflect from your coaching, right? And I know like that's putting a lot on Ken Dorsey, maybe not as much on Josh Allen as needs to be, but I don't know what the percentage is that comes. And I wonder what that dynamic is really like, and whether he's either one, incapable of doing that, or two, it's just not getting through.
Yeah, a couple of super chats coming in here. XX True Guns XX says Kincaid the future might have to trade Knox next. You're not getting Dawson Knox off this roster until at least 2025, whether with his dead cap, whether you're trading him or releasing him. I just don't see that in the forecast. Also comes in with the super chat and says, can we cut Von Miller after next season, need the money. No, you're pretty much locked into Von Miller for the next 2 to 3 seasons as well. So those are two guys who are going to be on this roster heading into the future for the Buffalo Bills. Josh Allen, he can do a better job taking some of the layups. Whatever's going on with his deep ball right now, whether it's the shoulder injury or his footwork, his mechanics, the communication, whatever it is, he's got to clean that up. I think he knows what needs to be fixed in that regard. And let's hope that this week he makes some quicker decisions. He gets the ball out. He has a little bit more touch on his deep balls. But I think the other thing that we have to realize too is, what was it, week 4 of the season, Vance Joseph and this Denver Broncos defense got cooked by the Miami Dolphins. And, speaking, and you have some friends who are Broncos fans as well, speaking to some people in or who have been around the Broncos and know the Broncos, say Sean Payton pretty much, put the training wheels on Vance Joseph after that debacle against the Miami Dolphins. And Vance Joseph has been going against his own personal sort of brand and philosophy and been running a lot of that Vic Fangio 2 deep shell stuff over the course of the last couple of weeks. And you've seen the Denver Broncos defense improve over the last couple of weeks as well. But we also know that Josh Allen has the ability to cook against these Vic Fangio defenses. He did it against the Miami Dolphins this year. The Miami Dolphins have a much better defense on paper than the Denver Broncos do. So if you're the Buffalo Bills, getting back to those concepts from weeks 2, 3, 4, if the Denver Broncos decide to do 2 deep shell you, because a lot of teams lately have just been 1 high shelling and have been sending a lot of 5-man pressure. So it'll be really interesting to see how the Broncos decide to approach this defensively. And I think there might be a chance for Josh to recreate some of that stuff that he did early on in the season if they in fact come out with those 2 deep shells.
Yeah, if they come up with that, there are going to be some opportunities for Josh to use his legs again tonight. Yeah, you're right. Since that debacle, the Broncos have been better. They've held their last 4 opponents, which includes the Chiefs twice, by the way, to under 300 passing yards. Their rush defense has improved over the last 3 games. 2 of the last 3, they've held opponents to 96 or less rushing yards. They held Kansas City to 62 rushing yards in the last game they played. So, yeah, they have gotten better, right? They have gotten better. But, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what kind of scheme they come out with. Like, it just feels like if I was the Broncos and Vance Joseph and I had the training wheels on, I would probably go watch what the Giants did, and I'd go watch what Jacksonville did. And those would be the 2 games I'd put on and see exactly what to do, and I would probably do the same exact thing.
A couple of comments coming in saying, Johnny Mack saying, as far as I'm concerned, Josh doesn't believe in the game plan. Josh looks miserable on the sidelines. Tough to see. Like we have to stop blaming Ken Dorsey for everything. And even if you do think it's Ken Dorsey's fault, Josh Allen chose Ken Dorsey. Ken Dorsey is the offensive coordinator of the Buffalo Bills because that is what Josh Allen wanted. So if you're mad at Ken Dorsey and you're mad that Ken Dorsey's the offensive coordinator of this football team, you're also mad at QB1 too, because QB1 chose this offensive coordinator.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, look, you learn a lot about somebody once you live with them, right? So they're living together now, and
I feel like
metaphorically, obviously, but like you learn about someone more.
and if the people in the comment section, I don't want to dismiss the comments, but if you're right, if you guys are right in the comment section, and Josh is completely over Ken Dorsey, he's not in tune with the game plan, he's not happy with the game plan. Ken Dorsey's not the Buffalo Bills offensive coordinator after the bye week. If Josh Allen is not happy with Ken Dorsey's job performance, I can guarantee you Ken Dorsey won't be employed by the Buffalo Bills after the bye week. Obviously, the Buffalo Bills have a late bye week this year, so the decision has to be made later. If the bye week was this week, I would be saying the same thing, right? If Josh Allen doesn't believe in the offensive coordinator, the offensive coordinator would be gone this week. It just so happens that we still got 3 more football games between now and the bye. You're not firing Ken Dorsey with 6 days to prepare, 5 days to prepare for the New York Jets. And then the Philadelphia Eagles are on the horizon after that. you're not doing it. Like, it's just not happening. But if there was some validity to what the people in the comment section are saying, and I'm not saying there isn't, I find it hard to believe. I think we'll find out real quick on the bye week whether there is any validity to that. All right, shifting our focus now to the Buffalo Bills defense versus the Denver Broncos offense. And this is the Broncos offense that they're really talented up front on the offensive line. They obviously added Mike McGlinchey and Ben Powers in free agency this offseason to go along with Garrett Bowles, like Cushenberry, Quinn Meniers. So they have a really good offensive line up front. Their skill position players, Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton, Marvin Mims, they have all been playing well in stretches this year. Tight end, they're a little bit banged up. They don't have the kid from UCLA whose name I am blanking on. There we go, Greg Dulcich. So they're trotting out Chris Manhurst and Adam Troutman, but at running back, Javonte Williams, Jaleel McLaughlin, Samaje Perine have all been capable running backs. McLaughlin really showing some burst for this Broncos team. And then Russ Wilson playing very admirable quarterbacking this year, not the embarrassment he was last year. So a formidable offense that the Buffalo Bills go up against this week in the Denver Broncos with obviously a guy like Sean Payton calling plays.
Yeah, and I think the Broncos, it's taken some time for them, right? I think like early in the season, they were still a dumpster fire, maybe a carryover from the year before. But by and large, so far this season, as things have gone along, Sean Payton has improved this offense. I mean, Russell Wilson, 16 TDs to only 4 interceptions on the season. He's not giving the ball away. He has weapons like Jeudy and Sutton being healthy has been a certainly a big red zone weapon for the Broncos this year. I think he's got 5 or so touchdowns this year. I think he only had 2 all of last season. And then the emergence of a guy like Jaleel McLaughlin as a complementary back to Javonte Williams, who looks, by the way, like he's back to pretty much full health, 80+ rushing yards for him in each of the last 2 games. McLaughlin's been super efficient with his touches when he gets them. And Perine leads their running backs in reception. So like a nice trio. And we know Sean Payton likes to mix and match the running backs from like his days back with the Saints when he had guys like Pierre Thomas and Darren Sproles, Mark Ingram. Like we know he likes to kind of like mix and match the running backs. So this Denver offense, while the Denver Broncos are only 3-5 and really haven't been world beaters, are a threat. You know, they're one of the better offensive groups that the Bills have played in this stretch where the Bills have struggled.
Yeah, looking at the comment section here, a couple of people have made the comment of Linval Joseph, and you mentioned the Denver Broncos running game. It'll be really interesting to see now in his second week with the Buffalo Bills how much play Linval Joseph gets, especially at his sort of advanced age, being brought in off the street, being here for 2 weeks. A guy like Linval Joseph could be the linchpin of this defense, especially when it comes to shutting down this Denver Broncos running game.
Yeah, he's going to have to, right? And I think the Broncos will try to limit the number of possessions that there are in this game. The Broncos are the 4th worst time of possession team coming into this week. So, they're going to try to right that. The Bills themselves have been brutal on time of possession. So something's got to give in this game, right? Denver, one of the worst teams time of possession on the season. The Bills struggled lately. Time of possession got absolutely destroyed by the Bengals early in that game in time of possession, and it was trending pretty badly. So, yeah, I think that the Broncos will try to limit possessions in this game and take their deep shots when they can. I mean, that's going to be the strategy, I would imagine, if you're the Broncos offense against this Bills undermanned and injured defense.
Yeah, you mentioned time of possession. This is one of those things where if the Buffalo Bills go out there this week and just let the Denver Broncos absolutely control the clock and they lose the time of possession battle, I mean, even if we eke out a win in this football game, I'm going to feel really down in the dumps about our prospects of being able to consistently win football games because, everyone wants to bash Sean McDermott for his comments about complimentary football. But I mean, the Bills' time of possession, if you look at it this season, if you filter it to account essentially for the loss of Trey White, Matt Milano, and Daquan Jones, meaning weeks 1 through 4 versus weeks 5 through 9. The time of possession for the Buffalo Bills offense in weeks 1 through 4 was 34.5 minutes. It was first in the NFL. After Trey White, Matt Milano, and Daquan Jones went out and the defense started giving up longer drives, the Buffalo Bills time of possession went from 34.5 to 28 minutes, from first to 24th in the NFL. First 4 weeks of the season with Trey White, Matt Milano, Daquan Jones on the field, the Buffalo Bills opponents were on the field on offense for 26 minutes, the lowest rate in the NFL. Since the injuries of Trey White, Matt Milano, and Daquan Jones, they've been on the field for 32.5 minutes, fourth highest in the NFL. These injuries have taken a toll, and now there are even more injuries than there have been in previous weeks. It's a real thing. It's not an excuse, but it's an explanation of why you're seeing what you're seeing. And the complementary football has not been there for the Buffalo Bills. The time of possession statistics show that. And it's not just the defense either. Josh Allen's been turning the ball over in the first half of these football games. Gifting interceptions in the first play game in New England, first half against the Cincinnati Bengals. Like, he's just gifting field position to opponents in the first half of these football games. That needs to stop. We need to play a clean football game to help our defense out. And if you look at it too, our defense needs to do a better job this week forcing 3 and outs or forcing, 6s and outs and just getting the team to punt the football not from midfield or forcing God forbid, forcing a turnover. Because if you look at the Bills' average starting field position this season, in the wins, the Buffalo Bills' average starting field position is the 33-yard line. In our losses, it's the 23-yard line. When we're winning because the offense gets the ball and they can go down the field and score in 7-8 plays. They don't have to go 80 yards. They don't have to go 85 yards. They don't have to go 90 yards. When they have to go that far down the football field, even if they get you to the 40-yard line, they sputter out and you end up in no man's land. And are we going to punt? Are we going to kick? Are we going to go for it? Stop putting yourself in that position by having better field position. The Buffalo Bills, weeks 1 to 4, 33-yard line was their average starting field position. In their wins this year, 33-yard line was their average starting field position. In their losses, 23-yard line. Weeks 5 through 9, it's been the 25-yard line. They're not getting the ball in very advantageous positions as an offense.
No, and it has hurt. And obviously, I talked about this online as well. The Bills, third most penalty yards, on offense of any team. So the defense, if they are not playing that complementary football and the Bills are getting pinned deep and they're not being, they're not getting in these good starting field position situations. And on top of that, there's the penalties. Like, you're really playing with fire because you're not going to possess the ball long if that's the case. Now, this Bills defense, the Broncos, they haven't had more than 20 first downs in a game on offense since week 2. To put that in perspective, the Bills have only had 2 games where they've had 120 first downs on offense this year, and that's even with the struggles they've had. So, like you said, if you can't force this team off the field, the Broncos are middle of the pack in third down conversion, but they've run fewer plays on offense than almost any team in the league because they haven't possessed the ball. So you have to force the Broncos off the field. You have to force them to punt. And you got to find a way to get a turnover. I know Russell Wilson hasn't thrown a lot of interceptions, but the Broncos do have the 5th most fumble giveaways this year, and the fumble recoveries have been hard for the Bills to come by. They've had the bad luck on the fumble bounces, so maybe something evens out tonight for them in that regard.
It'll be really interesting, and again, because they have not been here long, my hope is tonight that we see Linval Joseph and his ability to one-tech reignite. I don't even want to say reignite Ed Oliver because Ed Oliver's been fine. He had 7 pressures last week, but reignite Terrell Bernard, who's behind him, right? Reignite Jordan Poyer, who's in the 3rd level of the defense, who a lot of times makes his plays based off of some of that stuff, that clutter that space being eaten in front of him. So maybe Linval Joseph allows guys like Terrell Bernard to make more plays, allows guys like Jordan Poyer at the line of scrimmage to make more plays. Maybe that could lead to a turnover. And Rasul Douglas, the guy's known as a playmaker and a guy who jumps balls and and plays
It's
really
time.
well in zone defense. So a guy like Rasul Douglas, can he add a playmaking ability to our defense, a turnover playmaking ability to our defense? Either way, I think that those two additions, I think the Buffalo Bills made the right two additions. And I think that hopefully tonight these additions pay off.
Yeah, Rasul Douglas, known, as you said, for his ability to make plays on the ball. That's why the Bills obviously loved the fit for him and his ability to play off zone and then come up and make a play on the ball. Like this is why you got him, right? This is what you got him for. So, and J-Dub says, Judge, that's exactly what a good one take does, set everyone free. And he's not the same stylistically necessarily as Daquan Jones, but he can serve a different purpose in a similar positive manner, I would say. So yeah, these are two guys that now another 8 days, beyond this past game should be ready to go, I would think.
Before we get into our pregame superlatives, I want to talk a little bit about special teams this week. Kicking might be interesting tonight with the 15-mile-an-hour swirling winds. Tyler Bass back at home in Buffalo, where he's supposed to have this advantage over other kickers. So if we get into a field goal battle tonight, it's Will Lutz, a veteran kicker who's kicked in a dome most of his career for the New Orleans Saints, now with the Denver Broncos, versus Tyler Bass. It should be advantage Buffalo, but it's been a little stressful couple of weeks for every phase of the game for the Buffalo Bills. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. And then Sam Martin. What Sam Martin are we going to get this week? Are we going to get Tampa Bay Buccaneers, put him inside the 5-yard line, Sam Martin? Or are we going to get, I don't know.
Hopefully we don't see Sam Martin that much.
So yeah, hopefully we don't see Sam Martin that much. Are we going to get third string Conference USA like Sam Martin, which we got last week. Speaking about field position, right? Sam Martin played a huge role in how bad that field position was. Like, should the Buffalo Bills offense have stalled out as much as they did? No. Should Sam Martin have been anything but deplorable? Yes. Yes, he should have. All right, ladies and gentlemen, before we get to our pre-game superlatives, let's get our pre-game snack on. This show is brought to you by Picasso's Pizza. 4 great locations in Williamsville, West Seneca, Lancaster, and Blaisdell. Buffalo Pizza since 1980. You can order online at picassospizza.net. And if you're an out-of-towner like us, you can even get it mailed to your home. And I can tell you from experience, it is just as good as getting it fresh from the restaurant. Again, that is picassospizza.net. All right, on to our pregame superlatives. And as we do every week, we're going to go through and we're going to give out some pregame superlatives, some pregame awards, some guys that we think need to step up in order for the Buffalo Bills to be successful. We want you guys at home to follow along with us. Give us your takes in the comment section. We will read some of your comments on the air as well. And we're going to start with our Take Me Higher player of the game. And before we get into our Take Me Higher player of the game, this is a player not named Josh Allen, star player not named Josh Allen, who needs to step up for the Buffalo Bills to win this football game. I feel as if I am being culturally appropriated, and I'm not okay with it. Everyone knows that for years on this show, I have been the number one advocate for Creed and the song Take Me Higher. And now I'm just seeing it everywhere to the point where, like, is it even special? Is it even special anymore? Like,
I did get a DM from one of our viewers that said, "Hey, I saw this on Instagram. Made me think of Air Raid Hour."
This is quite frankly bullshit. Like, I'm seeing the Texas Rangers use it as their motivational song to win the World Series. I'm seeing people in Halloween costumes recreating the Dallas halftime show.
Josh Dobbs.
And I was just about to, like, Josh, you broke my heart, Josh Dobbs. Like, yeah. I don't know whether I like that about Josh Dobbs, that he has now taken on Creed's Take Me Higher as his mantra, because I love what he is doing, both in Arizona and now in Minnesota. But yeah, he is, he's also taking on the mantra of Take Me Higher. So everywhere you go, Take Me Higher. Maybe, I don't know, maybe it's soiled. Do we need to think of a different moniker for our star player who needs to step up?
No, we're not changing because we did it first, and I'm not backing away. I'm not backing
Right.
away from it. So
I
we're sticking with
respect that. I respect that. If anyone asks, we did it. We did it first.
I mean, we've got the videos from 3
Yeah.
years ago that have it. So
I don't know. Fanatics might delete some of our
well,
videos.
even from cover 1 2 years ago, we've got them. So
Anyway, our take me higher player of the game, Dave. Who is your take me higher player of the game?
yeah. Look, I think it's Dalton Kincaid for me, and the reason I say that is because DVOA wise, statistically, raw statistics, Denver Broncos have not been good defending the tight ends. Now I know they've got to play Travis Kelce twice a year. He dominates them every time that he plays the Broncos, it seems like. And Dalton Kincaid has been ascending, as I mentioned before, and he's ready, I think, to maybe take the mantle of that number 2 weapon in the passing game officially away from a guy like Gabe Davis, maybe if he hasn't already. People compare Dalton Kincaid to Travis Kelce as far as like coming out of the draft and what his ceiling would be. And it would be really appropriate, I feel like, for Dalton Kincaid to put a Travis Kelce-like game against the Denver Broncos, a team that Travis Kelce has tortured for years, and for Dalton Kincaid to kind of do the same on the big stage tonight. So for me, the way that things have been trending, the way that Dalton Kincaid's been getting involved in the passing game, that's been one of the bright spots, right, of this offense the last 2 or 3 games. So give me Dalton Kincaid as a take me higher player to take the pressure off Stefon Diggs, and maybe find the end zone tonight as well.
BFL Mafia News comes in and says Von Miller, guy needs to back up his cute Instagram post pregame. Yeah, let's rile up Von Miller, BFL Mafia News. Let's do that. But yeah, I would agree with BFL Mafia News too, though. Just Von Miller, when's it gonna happen?
This is old team revenge game.
Yeah,
like
when's the big play coming? Is it on Monday Night Football against his old team, right? Revenge game. That'll be interesting. I'm going to go James Cook. So I'm keeping it with the offense as well. I think, and this is a kind of game where you need James Cook to be 150 all purpose yards, James Cook, right? I said it before. I said at the top of the show, I just feel more comfortable and confident with this offense when James Cook is making an impact and he's making a regular impact. When it's just 1 or 2 plays here or there, scattershot over the course of a game, I'm just like, okay, cool. But like when he's consistently getting the ball in his hands and he's consistently making plays, I feel like this is a different offense. So making it a point of emphasis, obviously you want to get the ball in Stefon Diggs' hand. Obviously you want to get the ball in Dalton Kincaid's hand. You can make it a point of emphasis to get a third guy involved. And that third guy, in my opinion, should be James Cook. The Buffalo Bills need to run the ball a lot better this week against the Denver Broncos team who has shown that they can give up some chunk yards on the ground as well. So I'm going to go with James Cook as my take me higher player. Next up is going to be our wild card player of the game. Some of these people might have came in with these guys as their take me higher players, but I'm going to read them as the wild card players. And Khalil Shakir from Johnny Mack, Dan Van Kay comes in and says Latavius Murray or Rasul Douglas. What do you got, Dave? Is Linval Joseph? What do you got? Who is your wild card player of the game?
I do like the Latavius Murray pick. Again, another revenge game situation potentially for Latavius Murray. I'm going to go Rasul Douglas. I think got his feet wet in a really difficult spot on the road against the Bengals, played admirably against T. Higgins. I mean, obviously, T. Higgins is one of the tougher matchups for any corner, given his size, his hands, his ability to kind of box out guys on his routes. And I thought Douglas did a pretty good job considering the circumstance. So tonight, depending on sort of the alignments, he's either going to get Cortland Sutton or Jerry Jeudy. Most likely, we're going to see a guy like Cortland Sutton get matched up with Rasul Douglas at times. And Sutton's been a security blanket for Russell Wilson this year. I like Rasul Douglas tonight as a wild card. Bills desperately need a toxic differential type play, a turnover of some kind, get some momentum for that defense. Give me Rasul Douglas tonight as the wild card.
Charles G coming in saying Khalil Shakir, BFL Mafia News, Linval Joseph. Joe DeRosa says AJ Epinesa. Brendan P says, can Von Miller be a wild card? Honestly, maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
Carolina Frank says Leonard Floyd. and Charles G comes in and says Russ is definitely can be sacked. Yeah, he's not
Fifth most in the league.
Mobile quarterback he used to be. He's been sacked the 5th most in the league this year. I had Khalil Shakir written down, but I'm actually going to call an audible, and I'm going to switch it to Linval Joseph. I just think that stopping the running game of the Denver Broncos, making them one-dimensional, making it to where you can pin your ears back and you can rush after a guy like Russell Wilson, setting players like Terrell Bernard and whoever's that weak side linebacker and guys like Jordan Poyer and Taylor Rapp at the line of scrimmage, Teron Johnson, setting them up for success. I don't know if you'll see it on the stat sheet, but I feel like we'll feel it at the end of the game if Linval Joseph makes a big impact. So I'm going to go with him as our wild card player, my wild card player of the game. And that brings us now to the respect you player of the game. This is a player from the opposing team, the opposing team being the Denver Broncos, who we play tonight on Monday Night Football. An opposing player on the other team you have to respect in order to win this football game. Dave, I'm gonna start with you. Who's your respect you player of the game?
Yeah, a guy who we loved coming out of the draft. Unfortunate injury his rookie season, but it looks like he's really getting back to being the guy that people thought he was going to be when he got drafted, and is a really difficult guy to bring to the ground with one player, and that's Javonte Williams. That guy scares me. He has momentum. He's healthy, 80+ rushing yards in 2 straight games. The Denver Broncos offensive line has been pretty good run blocking this year, and Javonte Williams is a load to bring down. And he can break some tackles. So to me, Terrell Bernard, you're back tonight. Bills run D hasn't been great of late. I know they did a pretty good job against Joe Mixon and co, but the Denver Broncos probably going to have a little bit of a different game plan than what the Bengals did, given the personnel. So Javonte Williams, to me, got to respect him. Make sure you're staying disciplined if you're the Bills. Do not let him rip off big gains, and make sure when you get your hands on him, you bring him down. Tackling is key. So Javonte Williams for me.
A couple of good ones. Carolina Frank comes in and says Cortland Sutton. It's always those type of receivers that have big days, I feel like, against the Buffalo Bills. And
yeah.
Charles G says Baron Browning. Baron Browning is a very, very good football player coming into his own. I was torn between one player who's like a superstar and another guy who's like an auxiliary player. So I'm gonna throw them both out there. Number one, Justin Simmons. I mean, just one of the best safeties in the National Football League. And he's the kind of guy who can play games with Josh Allen. He can get Josh Allen overthinking. He can force turnovers, and that's not what we want to see from the Buffalo Bills. So as good as Patrick Surtain is in that secondary, as good as guys like DJ Jones are up front, as good as obviously Baron Browning is, I'm going to go with Justin Simmons as my take me higher player of the game. But my mini me take me higher player of the game, not just because he's small in stature. Player of the game. Just because he's small in stature, is Jaleel McLaughlin on that offense is just a big play machine. I'm just so afraid that he's going to take a screen pass or get a carry and just get a couple of chunk plays in this game that are just really backbreaking. So I'm worried about Jaleel McLaughlin, a guy who has really shown up for the Denver Broncos this year.
I will say, though, maybe one thing that is working in your favor in that is since Javonte Williams has shown his health, they've kind of limited McLaughlin's involvement, which, I mean, I get that if Javonte Williams is healthy, he's your between the tackles guy for bulk of the game. But like in 5 or 6 touches, if that's all he gets, McLaughlin could rip you for 40, 50 yards. I mean, so you gotta be ready for him for sure.
All right, time for our fire sale, our hottest take of the game. Dave, what is your fire sale, your hottest take of the game?
My hottest take of the game tonight is that the Bills hold the Denver Broncos offense to 13 or fewer points and take the ball away twice in this game. To me, that is a hot take given the way the defense has played as of late. I think they are going to get home. There's going to be some blitzing. I think McDermott's going to do some things tonight to get Russell Wilson off his spot. 5+ man pressures. Russell Wilson has thrown 2 interceptions, no touchdowns. He's barely over 50% completion. I expect maybe McDermott to get a little creative. Terrell Bernard back in the mix tonight, maybe sending him on a few blitzes tonight. So hot take for me, 13 or fewer points, 2 takeaways for this Bills defense, and they come to play tonight and maybe get a little bit of that stink off of the injury stink off a little bit tonight.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm going with.
All right. Carolina Frank comes in and says defense 4 sacks as his hot take of the game. Brendan P says a coach finally screams at Josh Allen and he responds with a 98-yard touchdown pass. I'm going to go James Cook. He was my take me higher player of the game. And I'm just repeating myself here, but 150 all-purpose yards and a touchdown for James Cook. I think he has a big day and he's one of the focal points of this offense. All right. Time now for our game predictions. Dave, take us back to the future. What is your prediction? Paint a picture for us. How does this game turn out?
Yeah, I'll tell you how it's going to turn out. First drive or two is not gonna be well. It's not gonna go well on offense. I think there's a more than likely chance you could hear some boos in Highmark tonight early in the game.
Mhm.
But with that said, I do think the Bills respond. As I mentioned, I think the defense does come to play tonight. They'll have the home crowd behind them. Terrell Bernard's back in the lineup. Rasul Douglas, I think, is going to add a little bit of swagger to that defense as well. So while I do think the Bills offense might get off to another slow start, I think rather than that lingering for the entire game, I think by the end of the first quarter, early second quarter, they get it going. They get the ground game going, and eventually this offense gets right and they get moving. And I do think the Bills tonight on offense will find a spark. I don't know that it's going to be perfect, and I don't think it's going to be there for 100% of the game, but I do think they find a spark tonight and score a decent amount of points. I'll say Bills 27, Broncos 12.
I like that. Carolina Frank comes in, says 41-13. Go Bills, man. I would love another beatdown like we had when we played them in Denver. That would be great. Johnny Mack says Ken Dorsey shows up on the sideline and burns his game plan. I'm going to go Bills 27, Broncos 20. I think the Buffalo Bills have a pretty solid day on offense. It's not like world beating by any imagination, but 27 points is 27 points. It's 3 touchdowns, 2 field goals, 5 scoring drives. I think the Broncos have 20 points. I think they're kind of playing a little bit of a catch up in the second half to get to that 20 points. I think they get the ball with a chance to tie it because the Bills can't sort of put it away. But I think the Buffalo Bills ultimately get us a stop and an anxiety-inducing finish, and the Buffalo Bills beat the Denver Broncos 27-20. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is time. Go get your beverages, your pizza, your wings ready to go. Catch us Sunday at, 8, 9 a.m. We'll schedule the post for our Bills Jets pregame. There will be no Air Raid postgame this week, but don't forget the Cover One postgame show is live tonight with Greg and Aaron following the game, and David Fox will have his postgame report on cover1.football immediately following the game as well. So, Bills Mafia, until next time, go Bills.
Go Bills.
Thank you for watching tonight's episode of the Air Raid Hour. Make sure to hit that like button on the way out. If you are catching the show on demand, leave a reply in the comments section and we will respond over the course of the week. You can always listen to every episode next day on all major podcasting platforms, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify, by searching Air Raid Buffalo. Thank you for your continued support, and as always, go Bills!